Welcome to another DragonLance Saga review episode. It is Misham Floor-Green the Ninth. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my review of The Oath and the Measure by Michael Williams. I would like to take a moment and thank the DL Saga members of this channel and invite you to consider becoming a member by visiting the links in the description below. You can also pick up DragonLance gaming materials by using my affiliate link. That is also in the description, so hook a brother up. All right, so this is my perspective only. If you disagree, that's okay. Share your thoughts in live chat if you're joining live, or in the comments if you're watching this afterward. That's all right too. The way these work, if you're new here, is that I have given a pre-written review that I will then present to you and intersperse it with other random thoughts that I didn't happen to write down in the moment. And then at the end, just sort of recap on characters or settings or author or your chats, your comments in the chat. And it looks like I've got a bunch in there. So we'll get to that. All right, so let's dive in, shall we? This was an interesting one. The story begins in much the same way as the film The Green Knight, where Sir Gawain has to go and fight the Green Knight after it interrupted Arthur's counsel. I don't want to say it was a rip-off of that tale, but it is awfully close to it. There are also some great Shakespearean vibes when a ghost appears, but I would expect nothing less from Michael Williams, who also connects this tale with his two previous stories about Galen Pathwarden, who we know befriends Sturm's grandfather. The story begins at a Yule festival in the High Clerist's Tower, where Sturm made a pilgrimage after his mother passed. This is a chapter where there's also a chapter where Caramon and Raistlin try to dissuade Sturm from going, but it clearly didn't work. So he's attending this festival, and all the knights begin singing a song to Huma, and the Green Man, Lord Wilderness, otherwise known as Vertumnus, suddenly appears. But he appears differently to each knight. Sturm sees him as a green man with vegetation sprouting from his body. Vertumnus is mocking the knights, and Sturm stands and confronts him. The Green Man recognizes Sturm Brightblade's surname, and they begin to battle, with Sturm being cut in the shoulder. Then, Sturm runs the Green Man through, and it dies momentarily. The Green Man rises and challenges Sturm to give a life for a life and face off against him in the spring in his southern Darkenwoods. Or Darkwood, sorry, not Darkenwood. By the measure, Sturm is honor-bound to go, even though he's not a Knight of Solamnia. Even though none of the knights there seem to even like Sturm or want him there except for Gunther with Wistan. And he's clearly living his life by the Oath and the Measure, as we've always been introduced to Sturm. But how much could Sturm actually know about the Oath and the Measure, never having read the Measure, which is not in Solace? There's not like 63 volumes in Solace of the Measure. You'd have to travel to the High Clerist Tower or go over to Sancris to read it, which he never has, and this arguably shouldn't have happened because the first time he went north to look for his father was in a Prelude novel. But getting ahead of myself. So the whole scene before and after this challenge, which Sturm obviously accepts, is actually pretty great. We get a whole bunch of Lord Knights bantering back and forth and truly get the vibe about how disconnected the Knights of Solamnia are at this moment. But the fact that they're still structured by their orders. I really enjoyed the back and forth. It actually kind of reminded me of my military time. So they train Sturm, and he's even given his father's shield, and they tell him stories of his father and grandfather. Supposedly, his father Angrif made a deal to spare his soldiers' lives by approaching a druid alone, but then he vanished. This is in direct conflict with every other story about Angrif Brightblade, so I think there's more to uncover here. But Sturm feels like it's a mystery he can still uncover. Winter starts turning to spring, and he sets off to the southern Darkenwoods and Vertumnus. His travels lead him into fog and a dragon hunting him, a dragon that's not supposed to exist at this time, by the way, but Vertumnus is magically turning the dragon away from Sturm. Which begs the question, what the hell is Vertumnus? Lord Wilderness. Now, I've read this novel already. I've done a whole bunch of different videos on all sorts of stuff Dragonlance. I have no idea what this Vertumnus character is supposed to be based on this story's explanation of him. So powerful that he can magically affect Sturm's combat miles away. He could turn a dragon from its prey and send him to the coastlines of Calaman. Like, what is this thing? Because I know what he used to be. He used to be a dude. based on the end of this novel. He was just a guy. He was just a bloke. That was it. And now he's like a magical mastermind. I don't know. None of it makes sense. All right, so this is where it starts to turn, by the way. If you really love this novel, turn this off. So in the fog, Sturm gets lost and arrives at Castle Decala, his grandfather's castle, now run down and abandoned. He's locked in when he enters and trapped by none other than Lord Boniface, Crown Guard, Derek, Crown Guard's uncle. Apparently the entire Crown Guard family is just filled with dicks. He has something to do with Angriff's disappearance, and he's trying to end the Brightblade line, but we won't know the exact details until a little bit later. It definitely seems like Vertumnus is going to tell Sturm if he ever gets to him. So he's trapped in the keep for a week, near starving to death. Then the ghost of Sir Robert Decala, his great-grandfather, appears and offers him 2 questions. The second leads him out of the castle, and he mounts his horse and sets off to the southern Darkwoods, terrified he won't make it in time. If he doesn't appear at the precise location and at the precise time, he will start sprouting vegetation from his shoulder wound, I believe, and then become like a plant man or something. It made me think of The Last of Us, is what like in my mind. So he realizes that one of his horse's shoes was nearly removed, so he slows down, and then he realizes that someone is trying to follow him, stopping him from succeeding, but he doesn't know who it is, even though we, the readers, clearly do. I'm not a horse person. How do you discover a horse's shoe is almost off while you're running? Like it's not like a flat tire where it's all thump, 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 thump. You know what I mean? Like, unless the shoe is thrown off the hoof, how would you have any idea? Someone who knows horses. I should just ask my wife because she would definitely know the answer, but I don't. I just thought it was weird. He was like, "Oh, the horseshoe is nearly off. I best walk you from here on out." Is it like missing a couple nails? Like, I just don't... Anyway. So he comes across a Kaganesty maiden playing the flute and sees a spider behind her. He rushes in to save her, but turns out the spider was a transmogrified house royal elf of Sylvanesty named Siren. She was trying to remove the curse on this one in this once in 5-year alignment of the moons and constellation. He stops the ritual unknowingly, and she berates him, saying that she hasn't decided if she's going to kill him over it. Now, I'm just saying, based on the story given, if I was that Kaganesty female, and I was madly in love with this man who was turned into a spider, and this is the one time in 5 years that I could cast a spell to change him back to a human again, or a Sylvanesty elf again, and some asshat human came in and interrupted me, I would be laying a beat down like Sturm has never seen on him before. And probably kill him just in the rage that you're experiencing in the moment. She does this whole like, "I haven't decided if I'm going to kill you yet. We shall see. But I am upset." What? You should be knocking his teeth out is what you should be doing. This is your one true love in life. And it took 5 years to get to this one place and time, and you finally get everything together. And he's just like, derp, 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 walks in and messes it up. I'd be pissed. Anyway, the Kaganesty's name is Mara, and they quickly become traveling companions as she leverages the measure and honor to make Sturm deliver her to Sylvanost. How she knows about the Solamnic Knight's honor, I don't know, because the Sylvanesty elves have locked themselves away before the cataclysm because of the king priest, because they don't trust humans. So why would they continue passing down knowledge to slaves, which House Servitor is in Sylvanost? Why would they educate the slaves, the Kaganesty, about knighthood a world away? I have no idea. But even let's say that she does, he's a kid. He's clearly not a knight of Solamnia. He's a little child right now. Like he's in his teens. Maybe 14, maybe 16, but definitely in his teens. She treats him as if he is an active knight of Solamnia, like, "Honor bound, and I will deliver you to Sylvanesty forthright." Like, I just don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. He's not a knight. He's a kid. Anyway. So knowing that he has plans in southern Darkwood, Mara insists on going with him, and then they will go to Sylvanost, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump to Sylvanost from Solamnia. I'm just imagining a really young Sturm Brightblade. He just traveled a week from the High Clerist's Tower and has seen nothing but trouble, and now he's forced to escort an elf to Sylvanost if he survives. But he's a child! They keep acting like he's Sturm of Winter's Night. You know, Dragons of Winter's Night. Sturm has to agree because he lives that way. But I don't know. It's insane. So anyway, they travel and the weather turns to rain. They hide in a cave when Mara notes that someone is following them. Sturm goes out to find out who it is, and it turns out to be the High Clerist's Tower's gardener named Jack Derry, who is clearly something more than just a gardener. They fight till Sturm realizes who Jack Derry is after having been bested by him, and they all go back into the cave, which is in active watch under Lord Boniface. Jack says that he knows a smith in Lemish just before the forest, as Sturm wants to mend his sword. Jack tells him that the sword looks like it was intentionally fractured to be weak. To break. And this is another one of those moments where I'm like, well, how the hell do you do that? You have an existing sword. How do you fracture the blade so that it will shatter without it being visibly obvious that there is a problem with said sword? Can some blacksmith watching this tell me? Because this makes no sense to me as I read it. All right. Let's see. And he was telling him about all the other mishaps and how the fractured sword, being ready to break must mean that someone is after Sturm. And Sturm says, no, it's just coincidence. But chapters before, Sturm knew someone was trying to catch him. And now he just says it's all coincidence. He was locked in a keep. His horseshoe almost fell off. And now he realizes his sword is fractured to break. And he's just like, coincidence. Are you stupid? The stupidest person on the planet. So anyway, he was insisting that they were traps just hours before tomorrow. So why all of a sudden the dim-wittedness? I don't get it. So Jack insists that they go to an easier ford of the Vingard River to cross, and they're ambushed by mercenaries there. They get to the other side, and Jack is kicking ass, calling Sturm Jack and insisting that they run away. This fools the brigands into thinking that Jack is actually Sturm and lets Sturm and Mara go while Jack is facing off against them. Sturm and Mara and the spider finally arrive at the town only to be greeted, then immediately imprisoned. The druid of the town, Ragnell, is the one who led the attack on the nearby Solamnic castles and won, including Brightblade, she claims. But they clearly won because they were allowed to through Solamnic infighting, not because they were actually more powerful or more effective or anything. We actually learn that Boniface Crownguard is the reason that Brightblade Castle fell. The reinforcements were ambushed at his behest in order to kill the Brightblades, and it all goes back to a duel between Angriff Brightblade and Boniface Crownguard, where Angriff won even after Boniface tried to leverage the measure to make him lose. He was embarrassed and turned to treachery. This is such a great way of highlighting how the knights got to where they are in Winter's Night. They actively work against each other for power and fame. There's also something that I think needs addressing. The author has already mentioned Goldmoon as a seer who gave Mara the flute that she's playing and taught her how to play the ritual music. One, how the hell would Goldmoon know this? She's a human, so she's also a teen at this point. But why bring Goldmoon into this at all? If she was a prophet in her tribe, why was she stoned when Riverwind wanted to marry her and her father was unable to make the blue crystal staff do anything? If she was a prophet, her father would know about it and her tribe wouldn't have turned from the gods to ancestor worship because she's a prophet. Why bring her up at all? And why would Sturm not know the name of Goldmoon years later when he found them outside of Solace? It's not a common name. He knows that she talked about the Quaeshu tribe. He knows the Quaeshu tribe is nearby his village that he's living in. Why would it be some sudden strange occurrence to run across two strange plainsmen outside of Solace? They undermine Chronicles. That's what all of these novels are doing. So they also brought in the Uthmatars, saying that they were a dying and dead family, meaning that they were gone by the time that Kitiara goes looking for them in the it was in the Preludes. But it's mentioned in the other book that she found her people and they didn't want anything to do with her or her father's legacy, if memory serves. So if they were all gone, then how did she find them? There's simply no reason to insist on having these connections in the story. It doesn't add to the story, it just takes away from it. The world is so much larger than the heroes of the lands. I wish these authors would recognize this fact. So, imprisoned, Sturm is visited by the druid of the town and gives him a vision of Solamnic Knights capturing goblin children, tying them up and leading them to a couple of knights who slaughter them all after burning their village down. This is used as an example why Lemmish citizens don't trust the Solamnics, and I get it. I wouldn't like them either. Politics are so regional that they often become brainwashed ideas rather than valid perspectives on life. So Mara has the sword mended by the blacksmith before she is arrested, and the blacksmith makes a remark about this wonderful blade and having been asked to fracture it by a Solamnic Knight we know as Boniface, and that he refused to do it, but then he mentions offhanded about two swords, this one and a Brightblade. So is he referencing the Brightblade? Again, why drop that line in without paying it off? Are we to believe that this guy fashioned or worked on a blade like multiple thousands of years old before him? It just gets a bit frustrating. So Mara and Sturm break out with the help of a spider, and they go to the blacksmith. They see him talking to Jack, and Sturm jumps through a window and confronts him. Jack is pleased to see him, but Sturm is pissed off, as no one seemed to know Jack's name as he said that they would. Jack leads them to the southern Darkwoods, and they pass a treant which is described as a giant. Not a treant, and it's on a massive horse. It's a treant riding a horse. Now, you don't have to just imagine a treant as being the Lord of the Rings treants. But treants are a thing that exist in Dungeons & Dragons and Dragonlance. And you can't just willy-nilly change the fundamental nature of a being and pretend that it's something else. Like, you can't... They're clearly addressing it as if it were a giant, but using the name of treant. It makes no sense, like, at all. And that's the treant on the cover right there that Sturm is fighting. That's the treant. That's not a giant. Treant, according to the author. Jack hears the search party looking for the escaped prisoners from the town, and when he leaves, the treant looks to Sturm, raises his club, and I don't recall any of this from my first reading of this novel, but I am frustrated as hell with it. Though I am actually enjoying it, which is weird. Like, I should be much more angry at what is happening, but I'm kind of here for the ride at this moment. Don't worry, it changes. So I find myself wishing that the editor was more insistent on having a canon for the novels. They would be so much better if they did. So the end of this novel is anything but satisfying. We're presented with a notion at the beginning that this will require Sturm to give a life for a life taken, and the suggestion we're presented with is that through a test to save Sturm's life, he must choose the Solamnic Knight path or become a nature knight and stay with Lord Wilderness. We clearly know his choice, so the assumption is that his sacrifice in Winter's Night is from this experience, in this book. And that actually takes the weight out of that moment, as he is fulfilling a bargain with Lord Wilderness in his death, rather than heroically standing and sacrificing himself for the knighthood and for his friends. It's one of a few moments that make this novel turn completely sour for me. The tenant dismounts his steed, the treant is what I meant to type, and fights Sturm, nearly killing him. Lord Wilderness and his two dryads appear and take him to Lady Hollis, also known as the Druidess Ragnell, who happens to be Vertumnus' wife and the parents of Jack Derby. So Lord Wilderness is also known as Vertumnus. Lady Hollis is also known as Druidess Ragnell. I have no idea why everyone has so many different damn names in this novel, but it's frustrating and confusing. So the whole imprisonment part of him getting arrested by the Druidess Ragnell in the town that Jack Derry sent him to was totally pointless, because they did not go do what she said by taking down the Solamnic Keep, because she is the wife of the Lord Wilderness who lives in this damn forest. Like, they don't even really live in that village according to the end of this novel. It's all just a setup for Sturm. It's so strange and confusing and meaningless and completely pointless that at this point in the novel, I'm like looking at the pages going, should I just burn this? Because it's making no sense at all. The whole imprisonment was pointless, and the line that she killed the knights was a lie. Everything that is presented in this novel as a fact is ripped from underneath you, and a new perspective is given. And it's never better than the original. It forces you to ask, was there actually a point to this novel? Is it to show that Sturm will die by his order? We already knew that. Is it to show the knights are suffocated by the rigid following of the measure? We already knew that too. So what exactly is the point of this book? Mara is approached by the dying spider, her lover turned spider. He reveals he was always a spider, and an enchanter turned him into an elf to lure Mara to him, which backfired. So again, the rug is pulled out from underneath us, and the spider dies. Then Mara stays and hangs out with Lord Wilderness. Get this. Her whole quest and life goals up to this point are just forgotten, and she just moves on. She doesn't mourn, she doesn't cry, she doesn't complain, she doesn't return to her home. She just hangs out in this forest because it just happens to be convenient for the novel. What? Sturm never hears from her again, even though he was honor-bound to escort her to Sylvanost, and he never even asks about it. And oh, by the way, it changes from Sylvanisty to Qualinisty and back again through the course of the novel, where she's from and where the spider is from. It just hops between the two elven nations separated by thousands of miles and a millennia of civil war. But yeah, it's an easy thing to mix up. You're writing a novel in a world that exists. Maybe do a little homework about that world. And if you don't, then the editor should be picking that up. They aren't even consistent about which elven nation that Mara is supposed to be returning to, which adds to my ever-mounting frustration with this novel. So Sturm is taken for healing to the woman who imprisoned him for no reason, and she heals him. Okay. And it gives him visions. He sees his own death. Raistlin, he sees Raistlin kill Caramon in Raistlin's test of high sorcery that has not yet happened yet. And I'm wondering, why are we relying on other stories and novels that in order to make this novel interesting? We constantly go back to other characters that are more interesting than what I'm actively reading in this story in order to make this story better. But it doesn't. It actually makes me hate this story more. So Sturm is asked to make his choice of being a hedge knight or a Solamnic Knight, and he chooses the measure, obviously. Then Lord Wilderness vanishes. Sturm wakes in the forest alone, wanders to the town of Dun Ringhill, where he was imprisoned, looking for the smith to take him to Lord Wilderness. Not realizing that he's already met him, and he's returning to the location that he just ran away from. It makes zero sense. Before Sturm was knocked unconscious and literally killed for all reason, he was running away from the town because they were after him. Now that he's brought back alive, he goes to the town in order to find Lord Wilderness. But Lord Wilderness is in the wilderness. He told you he was going to be in the forest. So why would you go to the town? I'm not yelling at you. I'm yelling at Sturm. So Sturm actually does find Lord Wilderness in the smithy, and they eat, and Lord Wilderness tells him that he was once a knight with Lord Boniface, and when Boniface hired the mercenaries to kill the Solamnic reinforcements that were going to help Sturm Brightblade, he blamed it on Vertumnus. So he left and became Lord Wilderness. He tells Sturm that Boniface is a traitor like Jack Derby did, like Sturm already knows, and he still refuses to believe it for a moment. Meanwhile, Boniface hires Capac and Bozak Draconians to assassinate Sturm if Sturm tries to return to the High Clara's Tower. Yeah, Draconians. which are not supposed to be known about in this time frame. That Sturm is shocked to see in Autumn Twilight because it's a new species that no one has ever seen before. He actually fights and kills them already. This timeline inconsistency is infuriating. So Sturm, now good with Lord Wilderness, returns to the High Clerist's Tower to get revenge on Boniface and is attacked by the Draconians. Lord Wilderness helps him through magic and Sturm kills the leader in some Bozaks, then returns to the tower. He stands before the High Council and tells them everything that has transpired, and Boniface challenges him to a fight over the accusations per the measure. Boniface is the best living swordsman and easily beats Sturm, leaving the issue resolved with Boniface innocent, and Sturm returns to Solace. Then, Gunther arrives in Solace to tell that Lord Wilderness returned the next Yule and tricked Boniface into a duel where he defeated him, and Boniface admitted to the treachery and was hanged. The end. So Sturm being present in the whole sordid tale was completely meaningless. There was no reason for him to be involved in anything at all. And I'm left with loving the first 2/3 of this novel and being utterly confused and disappointed in the last third. I don't know why the author made these choices, but what can you do? I would I would recommend this to anyone who loves Solamnic Knights, as it portrays them as they are in my mind, flawed but fun to be reading. But if you want to gain insight on Sturm, you will not find it here. That is my review. I was so frustrated with this book. Maybe you weren't in the right mind frame. This is your least favorite book in the saga so far. It felt like a short story idea being dragged painfully into a full-length novel. Yeah, I agree. You expected poetry with Michael Williams, but he could at least have written a new poem instead of having the characters repeat the same ones over and over again. Yeah, I agree. Gunther is your favorite and the non-main characters in Dragonlance, so you did enjoy his scenes. Yeah, I like the Solamnic Knight bantering. I thought that was a lot of fun because that's what they were in this time, you know. I didn't realize they were as treacherous as Boniface was, but yeah. It's a meetings book, but there were no stories of young Sturm meeting Caramon or Raistlin like you were hoping. Which arguably is the whole point of this Meetings Sextet. How did the heroes of the Lance meet each other? And instead, it was, how did Sturm find out everything that happens in the future and then go home and make no changes to things that would happen in the future? Draconians, really? Your biggest pet peeve is when they introduce locations and creatures in these prequels or meeting stories that take away from the reveal in Chronicles. Hear, hear. Sturm and Raistlin are fascinating in their scenes together. They're so different but similar in their convictions, and both have intelligent, valid points of view. Yeah, I've always liked the dynamic between Sturm and Raistlin. Always. Cithros, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Chris, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Bruno, thank you for tuning in from Brazil. Nice. SMR Chiaz, how you doing, man? You got one live. The horse will change its gait when the shoe is loose. Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that. I didn't know. Harley Quinn, how you doing? Thanks for tuning in. In the Elves' defense, 5 years isn't that long. That's actually very true. You have a good point. You completely forgot that this was a Sturm novel. Yeah, just looking at the cover, you wouldn't know it either. You believe that the way they make a sword brittle would be to heat it and cool it repeatedly to certain temperatures, basically the reverse process. Okay, that's interesting. Okay. You agree that these novels undermine the Chronicles. You think that's why Hickman and Weiss always ignore them in their own writing. Yeah, that makes sense to me too. You consider these books to be a lot like DC Comics. They're stories, but not all set in the same paradigm, like alternate universe stuffs. Yeah, and I guess I could get on board with that concept of it. It's just, it is frustrating. I can't help but be frustrated. Some of the monster lore is off, though, and for gaming purposes, that may be corrected. It's just not against Dragonlance. Played with the DM's choice of canon, but get the monster races exclusive to DL. Yeah. So Gunther meeting Sturm is a little early. I agree. You remember thinking that it was really cool and interesting that the love interest actually was a spider all along. Your brain was blown. I like that too, a lot. I think it's a nice little twist, but it came at the end of so many other twists that I was just tired of the twist because you start to distrust everything that's being presented. If you do one twist in a story at the end, you're just like, whoa, that's great. Oh, that's cool. If you do all twists throughout the whole story, you're just like, well, I'll just read the last chapter then, because that's the only thing that's going to make any sense. Everything else is a lie. Why are you effing with me like that? Like, what is the point? Because after one twist, you're like, oh, that's great. After two, you're like, huh, After 3, you're like, F you, man. You're just, instead of it being a twist, it's just them going back on the story in order to make sense for what they're coming up to fix, the problems that they had already ran into narratively. And it's no longer a twist, it's them trying to fix things. Anyway, that's it for my review of The Oath and Measure by Michael Williams. What did you... I remember I owned this novel. I didn't have an unboxing for it because I already own it. I remember loving this novel as a child. I clearly didn't think about it. Clearly. Because the second you start thinking about it, you get frustrated. Anyway, what did you think of Sturm seeking his father and learning nothing, only to try again a couple of months later with Kitiara? Do you like how Lord Wilderness was portrayed in his story? And finally, is there any way to get a satisfying story about Sturm before Winter's Night? Feel free to email me at info@dlsaga.com and leave a comment below. I would like to take a moment and remind you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, ring the bell to get notified about upcoming videos, and click the like button. This all goes to help other Dragonlance fans learn about this channel and its content. And this channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga. Thank you so much for joining me in the celebration. Thank you for watching. This has been Adam with DragonLance Saga. Until next time, Slanjavar.